Hello, people of the internet, and welcome back to another dangerous dialogue. We're getting dangerous on a Sunday night. Ooh, danger. High voltage. Oh, what a remix. Thank you. Look at that. I've got a backing dancer and everything. I've got an embarrassed mom. It's what more could you want?
I'm sorry, I was getting flashbacks to the Hello Fresh theme song in my kitchen. The cooking with Zoe, theme song that you did in my kitchen. I was getting flashbacks, and it was.
So you can't mention these and then not let me give them to the internet. Those videos are something else. Anyway, let's grab ourselves back down to the wonderful planet that is Earth. Today is World Environment Day, and we're going to talk about carbon footprint this week. I feel like climate change is still a topic that we kind of shy away from, and kind of acknowledging what our own part is in that, hence why we are talking about our carbon footprint today. I'm certainly no authority on this, and as Zoe's just said just before we've gone live here, she doesn't know very much about it either, which is fine. I think everyone should be allowed to kind of have conversations about things they don't know, and that's why we're here. So let's get ourselves started. I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves that's here, because they know themselves far better than I. Well, that's actually not true. That's not true. I feel like I might know you both very well in ways that you are unaware of. That sounded creepy. It sounded creepy. It wasn't what I was going for. I just mean that, we have consumed many units together, all of us. So, okay, wrap it up. Thank you, Mum. So, Zoe, who are you? Where are you from? What's your jam?
I don't like jam. It makes me feel sick. I prefer peanut butter as a spread. My name's Zoe. I am still a student from all the other times that I've been on here. And I believe that climate change is a real thing.
Oh,
yeah, I believe it's real. Some people out there don't, but it is, and they're dumb. In my opinion, only, or not only, but
it's not an opinion. Don't worry, Zoe. They are dumb.
It's a fact.
It's a fact. And Val, tell us all about you.
Yeah, my name is Valerie Christensen, or Val is pretty easy to remember. I'm a theater director, a performer, and emerging playwright. And I am definitely passionate about these kinds of topics, and also a teacher.
I feel like, Val, you need to teach us your ways immediately, because that's the most succinct introduction out of the three of us.
Wow, you gotta get to the point. You gotta get to the point.
I love in the idea of like talking about reducing things to this evening and trying to be more economic, that you've just come in and been like, no, this is how it's done.
Oh, I should say that I am in the world of Canada, or not the world, we're all in one world, in fact, in the nation of Canada, from and currently, but I did live in London town for some time, and that's how we met.
Absolutely. I'm interested, because we've all kind of frequented different nations. Has anyone noticed like a vast difference between how they behave in terms of their usage of things, their carbon footprint, their things that they do when they're in a different country?
Yes, because when I'm not paying for it, I'll spend more.
Because you've lived in Spain, Zoe, so were you different in Salou in Aberdeen?
A little bit. Technically Catalonia, by the way, just putting that out there.
Fair.
Yeah, I mean, even when I go on holiday, I'm in a hotel, I'm not needing to pay the bills, so if I'm using more electricity than I would be at home, I do tend to find myself not being as conscientious about it. Like when I'm at home, I turn off the washing machine. I don't have it on all the time. I turn a lot of my plugs off if I'm not using them. I always turn the tap off when I'm brushing my teeth in between, the first and second round, as they would say. But in other places, if I'm not paying the bills, I'm just like, fuck it.
Yeah.
I don't need to pay for it.
I feel like that's the holiday mentality a little bit though, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do you feel, Val?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for me, I don't even look at it so much as countries, but as rural versus urban settings. So in cities such as London, or I'm in Vancouver right now, I'm able to take public transportation, and transportation is one of the main, contributors to our carbon footprint. And when I'm in a rural community, a small town where I don't have access to those things, I end up driving. And especially when I was in rural Canada, because it's also a lot colder, there was just no way I was going to walk to work. And no joke, I was also worried about bears early in the morning. So I was definitely going to turn on my car. And, this is somebody that I started teaching, and I was like, I'm going to influence my students. I want to inspire them. I'm going to walk to work every day. And then I saw grizzly bears out on my street, and I was like, fuck that. I'm taking the car.
Paved with good intentions. I love that.
I hate that I can't use grizzly bears as an excuse for being lazy. Damn it.
But you can use other things. Everyone can. And that brings us to this conversation.
Exactly.
There's too many haggises. I'm going to use
Do you know, I have the same situation, Val, when I'm walking through Soho. I'm like, oh my God, there's grizzly bears everywhere. Happy Pride Month, everyone. Yes. So yeah, I guess we've kind of hit on the first thought that I have is that could we all just do better by not being as lazy about it? Is it as easy as that?
I think you know what I really do think because I always think, okay, I'm not a scientist, but I know what you're talking about, the responsibility of the citizen. I do think that we need to look at, who are the bodies of powers in our societies. And so I think corporations, for example, industries, the amount of, carbon footprint that these kinds of industries have that I've seen firsthand is way beyond measure compared to what even a full town of people could contribute towards. What I mean by that is, of course, there are emissions. So I could give you an example, like where I'm from, there's so many industries, and they are right now, well, I was going to say I shouldn't mention this, but I will. Rio Tinto is in a lawsuit for clean air in the town that I'm from. And the reason why is I don't know the exact number, but they went way beyond the recommended health advice for emissions. And as a result, people in the town, their health has been compromised. I myself have asthma. And industries, this is not like a unique situation. Industries globally do this almost in every country. And if you look at the statistics, it gets worse in developing countries. Places such as Canada mines all across South America, for example, and there's all kinds of great climate crises in those communities. So I think, yes, we should look at the citizens, but I think that's also a form of kind of almost propaganda where the responsibility is thrown onto us when we should actually look at these big industries and what they're doing.
I wholeheartedly agree. I do feel like, we all hold a level of responsibility to it, but of course you are right that there are those who have a much, much higher level of emissions, as you mentioned, than me. Not me personally. Well, yes, me personally, but lots of us. Zoe, do you think for these companies it is for them? Is it laziness that they go, well, actually, I'm just going to do it this way because it's cheaper for us to do, although it's not as sustainable?
I mean, absolutely. At the end of the day, it all comes down to profit and money. If they're making more money by cutting corners and doing things that are not environmentally healthy, then they're going to do that because money makes the world go round, unfortunately. And it's very difficult for us as individuals to make a massive impact, just a few people. Although we are absolutely capable of it. It's going to take a hell of a lot of us to make that impact, whereas these big corporations that are causing many of the emissions, if they just did, no one's saying you have to completely up and change everything, but make small conscious efforts here and there to begin a change. Like, it's hard to drop everything and completely change your lifestyle. And that includes like big corporations. You can't just expect them like, boom, done. We're totally like great with our emissions, great with our carbon footprint. But it's as simple as like, for individuals, in fact, it's as simple as like swapping to a vegetarian meal a week, you know, like one vegetarian meal a week. That kind of reduces things, and building up on it from there. Because it is laziness, and the motivation and that is a big part of it for corporations and for individuals. I mean, I know myself, like having to make the conscious effort of trying to not use palm oil or trying to stay away from single-use plastics. It's things you never really think of, like trying to shift from using fast fashion to try secondhand, you know, charity shopping and stuff like that. And, you know, like swapping clothes. I mean, myself and my family, especially my cousins, we're constantly swapping clothes instead of going out and buying new things. But to make the conscious choice of doing that, it does take more than just doing it the way we've been doing it for years now, for decades. So yeah, I've completely forgot what your actual question was.
No, but I really loved your point. I think you raised something that I think is sort of the crux of it all, really, is that I think we can often associate that, of course, bigger corporations and bigger companies, of course, have a bigger footprint than an individual because they are a company. I'm not defending that. They some of them are terrible. But I think you mentioned like palm oil products, for instance, and fast fashion. I think if we, as the consumer, don't buy those things, the pyramid topples because they don't make the money from it. So in some senses, I do think that does come down to the individual. There is things that you can do that influence those kind of decisions globally without you having to go out with like a placard or something, right?
I mean, the mindset that we're in at the moment, sociologically, it's a lot to do with rationalization, and sidebar is known as McDonaldization. You, even if it's not great quality, if you know you're getting it for a good price, it doesn't matter the quality, and it's quick and it's easy, you're more likely to go for that option than taking the longer route around and going for like a really nice meal. That's just a example, or going for like better quality clothes that aren't going to fall apart after 5 minutes because they're going to take too long to be made, they're too expensive, and all those kinds of things. So because we're in a state of rationalization at the moment, it's really hard to shift from that mindset to a mindset of, right, I need to actually think about what I'm doing, because not thinking about it and just doing it is so easy, you know.
I love what Zoe is saying, because it makes me think about, if you think about the climate crisis as a whole, it sounds like a really abstract concept. Like, we're not meant to think that our planet could, you know, be so ill that natural disasters would be upon us and it could be the end of humanity. Like, that is too, you know, in our minds. I don't think we can actually fathom that. So it's easier to just let other people talk about it. Or even for myself, I actually go back and forth, because who can live with that amount of stress? There's a reason why, you know, climate change experts, they're getting a form of PTSD now, because they are consumed with this knowledge, and that's a great burden to carry. But the exciting thing that you're talking about, that makes me excited, is I want to think about the role of artists, because I myself, I'm not a scientist, or I'm not someone that could, you know, necessarily be the best communicator behind some of these ideas. But as an artist, I think about, like, okay, who are the powerful people in our society? Well, though you could say those could be the people that are influential, and artists are influential because we influence ideas. I think that audiences are really smart. I don't think we should tell them what to believe or what to think. They can do that on their own, but we can generate discussion. I just saw a movie last night, and I will not tell you my opinion on that movie, Crimes of the Future, David Cronenberg's new movie. And never mind what I thought about the movie and all of that, but what happened after the discussion of the movie, the characters, the plot, I started to talk about the climate crisis because he was introducing that. So that happened with me and another friend. We start to discuss that. So I feel like as artists, we can facilitate this into the consciousness of people because we don't want to think of those things. And it's not by drilling it into people's heads. We could do that through the genre of comedy, make everyone in the room laugh, but then talk about a serious topic. And that is the beauty of our work. That is the beauty of what we
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the amount of times like we've been able to get back. Well, I say we. I'm not an artist, but the amount of times like stuff like film and comedians, and they get messages through because sitting listening to like an academic lecture or sometimes a TED talk, they're not for everyone. Right. And a lot of the time, some of the language they use is completely academic and people don't understand it. I mean, I do social sciences. And I tell you, some of the stuff that I have to read, I'm like, who invented these words? I am no lexicographer, only know that because of Countdown. It's true. But it's like, it's a way to get like these short films and that. And even, what's his name? The rapper that did The World, and he got all these different celebrities and it was about the environment and they did like a rap song. And Justin Bieber was a baboon. Ariana Grande was a zebra. Yeah.
Yes, I do remember this. It was so mad.
It's just a way to get messages across easier. And because when you're just listening to it, it's so easy to go in one ear. But when you're seeing it, and you're seeing these things like on the television, not even documentaries, but like just films that people can sit and enjoy. And it does even stuff like this, like the podcast, this is what this is for. Opening up a dialogue, opening up a conversation, making you be like, yeah, you know what? There's actually something to this that I've just been shown. But sitting listening to it from some scientist dude, you're just like, ugh, arsed. But seeing it in a creative way, it's like, it does hit you harder, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we talk every week about whatever our topic is and say, well, I mean, we need to educate people better. And I think that is such a sweeping statement that because we only talk for an hour, like there's only so much you can unpack of a sweeping statement. But I think the reality is this is often a way, we're a theatre company that make this, the way that we as a theatre company try to educate is by doing things like this. And today we released a poem that's about, I guess, how Mother Nature is polluted, literally. But it's a beautiful poem. And with it, Naya did that was here last week talking about kind of veganism with us. I also, sorry, this is why I fucked off to the back there and came back. I also just want to pick up another beautiful piece of art that I got to see, which is this play called Kill Climate Deniers, featuring none other than, there she is, Valerie Christensen. Signed what? Yes. I tell you, my carbon footprint that evening was probably very high, because I had a lot of alcohol.
I remember Tom had to leave midway through the show.
It was like 5 minutes before the end, but yeah.
No.
He did that to me as well. Weird.
Okay, y'all can get fucked.
And I remember this was a really great moment because Felicity Ward, who's a famous comedian, Australian English comedian, she was taking off some of her clothing on stage, and then Tom just darted out, and she told me all she saw was a young man just start like running when she started to take her clothes off.
Tom was like, boobs, no, I'm out. No, can't do that.
That's how it came over. The reality is I just needed to pee so bad. But yeah, I mean, I think art's place in big things and creating change is so important. I was really lucky. Last year I got to work on a show called We Came to Dance, which was like a new family musical thing, where it was like immersive in the sense that the audience had to dance along with the show. It was really great fun. It was literally half an hour long. It was not intense, but it was like unashamedly about sustainable food sources, and kind of how you can make better change, I guess, individually that creates global change. but it was a kids musical. It was a family musical. So it was like three fucking aliens on stage telling this story who had come to Earth. And there was like dance music and like crazy moves and things. So for a kid, they'd come and just enjoy something like that. But it leaves a little imprint. It leaves that little mark, doesn't it? And yeah, I think, you know, too often there's big topics that are forced down your throat. And I think there are softer ways to do that. Yeah, lovely. Yeah. Zoe, you mentioned a couple of ways. You mentioned fast fashion, kind of individualistically, this is where our carbon footprint comes from. I'll be honest, I didn't know these things until, which is what I love about doing these. I don't know what the things are until we go and have a quick Google, because we know we're doing them. But like what makes up your carbon footprint to me surprised me. Like I was like, oh yeah, it'll be my emissions. It'll be, you know, me getting on travel. It would be my energy bills. I kind of didn't think about those secondary things, I guess, like food. Food's not a secondary thing, but food and the process of that food being made. And I guess waste is an obvious thing. We talked a lot about food last week.
Just the spending of money. Like the spending of money raises your emissions. I don't know. I use banks online for that. How does that raise my emissions? Like I'm so confused about it because when we did that carbon footprint thing, which I'm sure we'll discuss heavily, most of my carbon emissions were from my spending.
Really?
That's where, most of my house was like 0.98 something, I think. And then my travel, because I only really travel around Aberdeen, which isn't massive, it was only like, it wasn't that much either. And then I got to my spending and it was like 4.86 tons. And I was like, what am I buying?
Your spending was 4.8 for the year, presumably.
For the year, yes, for the year.
So my whole footprint for the entire year was just under 3.5 tons.
Can you run us through how you calculate this? Because I'm fascinated. I haven't done this myself. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I highly recommend this. This was because we knew we were doing this. We found this website. I will spin it around. It's called Carbon Footprint Calculator. It's really wonderful. And you just put in essentially all your personal details and bank details. No, I'm joking. You put in just
your social security number.
Yeah, that's the ones. Yeah. You put in things about your house, about any flights you've taken, car journeys, motorbike journeys, bus and rail, and secondary things, which is kind of the things we were discussing there. And it tells you throughout whatever period you've asked for or throughout a year, essentially what that it translates to in carbon tons. And because I was fascinated to know what my carbon footprint is, because I felt like it was it felt hypocritical of me to talk about it and not fully understand what my own impression on this planet is. So I guess that's why I did it. But
not me. I'm a hypocrite. I'm very comfortable being one.
No, not in the slightest.
I only did it because Tom forced me to do it.
Oh, that sounds impressive. I didn't.
That Tom.
Yeah, no.
He said to me, he was like, I know where you live. I will come and get you. And I will kill you if you don't put your carbon footprint and if you don't calculate it. It's facts. There's no written proof or signed proof, but we know what Tom's like.
Yeah, well, that's just because you're in Aberdeen. Let's face it. He's not coming to Canada. I'm safe over here.
That's true. Can I come to Canada too, please?
Hold on. I was supposed to go to Canada to see you, Val, at the end of last year, and then I got COVID.
I know. I should make light of that, but I am.
But as a result, my carbon footprint is much better because I didn't fly to Canada.
You're right.
But I'm interested on that exact thought, Val, because you've had to when you lived in the UK, you went back to Canada at one point, didn't you? Yeah, and we went to Russia for a period to study there. So like, I guess, and we went to Prague actually, the two of us. Christ, we sound like right worldy people. But
rich people.
Not at all. They were
Oh, no,
very
not
often
at all.
not.
And that's part of the problem. You don't have to be rich to contribute so much to this climate
Yeah.
crisis. But go on, Tom.
But yeah, I guess I'm wondering, were you ever conscious, because I know this is something you've always been conscious about and you've always made work about, are you ever conscious when you're booking a flight going, because I know now you can do drop down menus that give you the least carbon emissions or
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah. I really did. I think for me, that was my biggest, uh, how do you say, like or consumer conflict, because in Canada, just to give you some context, very expensive to fly. It's more of a middle upper class thing, but when I was in London, I was very, very tempted by the airfare, very tempted, and the close proximity of the other countries. And yes, I did partake in many of a voyage to Ireland and so on and so forth.
Oh, we went to Ireland too. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yes, I went here, I went there, a little splash of everywhere, and it was almost like you gave me a nice drink of alcohol, and I went, well, hold on, maybe I want a second glass, and maybe I want a third one, and even though I know I shouldn't be getting drunk, I think I'm gonna get drunk tonight. So yes, I am more.
That's my inner monologue.
I am more conscious. I suppose that's the one area of my life that I feel the most, you could say, guilty about. That, like, okay, I realize I am not special. I am a speck in this on this planet, and I should definitely be held accountable. And maybe, who knows, like maybe in the future, not saying people can't fly, but maybe we should limit the amount. Maybe everybody has to, because what the problem with prices, what I notice here, is that all it means is that rich people can fly and then nobody else can. So I don't think it's about raising prices. I think it's about, like, can we limit our voyages? I don't know why I keep saying voyage.
One holiday a year. Everyone gets one a year.
You're so generous, Zoe. Where did you get this generosity from? I love it.
My mother.
Oh, no way is Helen taking us on holiday. Thank you.
Maybe when she sells the house.
I don't know if that's unreasonable, and I mean this in a serious way, because I actually did go to university in India, and there are moments of the day where they literally, not moments, I should say hours, where they literally shut off the water and sometimes electricity because the water runs out. There is none left. So if we don't want to, I'm using that as an example of, like, when people think, oh, it's kind of like you can't give people limitations, I'm like, maybe we should. Maybe it's not that unreasonable, because for the sake of our future, I think it's totally reasonable to be like, hey, Charlie, Meg, Zoya, how about 4 flights a year? How about 2? I don't know, but don't go by my advice. We should really be seeking what the reasonable amount is, or sustainable, not reasonable, sustainable. Yeah. Because reasonable is subjective, sustainable isn't. It's based off of evidence.
I regularly think about Zoya's flight kind of program. It's just intense, isn't it? And not Meg. Oh my God, Meg.
Can't believe Charlie.
We joke, but we have a mutual friend who is very well traveled.
Goodness.
Yeah, and I do often think about. In fact, Zoe, you know them as well.
Do I?
I'm not going to name and shame, but like yeah, they travel a lot. They travel a lot. And they are a very conscious person. I'm not trying to degrade them at all, but it does make you think. It really does. Particularly when I saw it in like actual statistical numbers in front of me. There are other ways to travel that are less polluting. Do you drive, Zoe?
Yeah, I do drive. In fact, have I not driven you about before?
Have you?
I'm pretty sure. Probably. Let's be honest. We do. No, I don't drink that much.
No, I said, was I drunk? That's why I didn't.
Okay, yes, you probably were. I just want to put out there that I also do travel, but I travel places like today. I went to Storybook Glen, which is so far away from our team.
They still have like the really cursed Shrek and stuff. Oh my God.
They do.
Val, I need to send you pictures of this. Storybook Glen is like, it's...
Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyway, I do drive. I do go on a lot of short journeys. I have to say, because sometimes I don't want to walk. Also, if it is within walking distance, it's not going to take me far. I do, like, when I go for my sunbed, I walk up to the sunbed because it's not that far. Also, don't want to get a parking ticket because I don't want to pay for parking for 15 minutes. So it's a lot easier for me to walk. I always walk Riley to and from school because it's just there. If I'm going into town, I walk into town because it's just there. But if I need to go to like suburb areas, I will take the car instead of public transport. One, because I have a car, what's the point of using public transport? And two, I have slight anxiety about going on public transport now. But this is like a post-COVID kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I much prefer, like, I know they say like don't do so many short journeys and all that, but it's all I ever tend to do because I don't travel out with even Scotland, even like my kind of area often. Like, it's quite rare that I go out. I don't go on many planes. I've not been on a plane since 2019, and before that was 2015, I think. So I don't often take long haul travel flights or anything like that, which is another reason why I was surprised that my carbon footprint was so high.
Yeah,
because I'm not traveling lots. Like, I'm not even out every day in the car, you know what I mean? Like, it's just if and when necessary.
To give you,
so yeah,
on exactly that, to give you some context, it's more common now that big corporations have carbon calculators on their website that are kind of customer serving, if that makes sense. So the LNER, who's the big long haul, I guess, for want of a better word, train provider in the UK. So for me, living at one end of the country and living in the other end of the country, let me try that again. Living in one end of the country and from one of the other ends of the country, so London to Aberdeen, where you are, Zoe, a train is 28.32 kilograms of CO2 in terms of an emission that I would have going from one end to the other on a sort of 8-hour train. By car, that is, my maths is a bit terrible, about 3 times 94 kilograms of CO2, and by plane 173 kilograms. I mean, it's so perplexing to me that we choose other forms of transport until you think about the cost, because at the moment it would cost me about £300 for a train ticket to get to Aberdeen, and it would be so much cheaper if I had a car, and sometimes it is even cheaper by plane.
And again, that's the rationalization side of it.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, okay, the planes are more emissions, but if I'm not going to have to sit on a train for like 8-9 hours and I'm going to get there in an hour and it's going to be cheaper for me, why am I not going to do that? That is completely the rationalization mentality that's there.
I think you're completely right about that, Zoe and Tom. And I think, like, in fact, you know, the 5 main contributors to our carbon footprint would be transportation, food, consumption, which is what you're talking about, like when you're talking about clothing, as well as household energy, which is what you spoke about. And I think that is part of the problem. It is actually cheaper for me to buy food from Mexico than it is to buy from the city that I'm local, right? And so, of course, if you think about the carbon footprint of something that is like, you know, a few blocks away from me versus another country, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And same way you're talking about, like, the train is more expensive than an airplane. Like, how can that be? So it's really hard for consumers sometimes, especially ones with families, especially ones with a lot of stress. Like, what are they to do? So I do think that there needs to be pressure to make this more logical, reasonable for people. My problem with this is kind of what I started with, is why is all the responsibility on consumers? Why is all the responsibility, especially I feel like on often, let's face it, lower income folks, okay? That should not be the case. The pressure should definitely be held across the board for everybody, especially for folks that are in a higher class, higher economic bracket, and big corporations. So I want to always go back to that point because I think
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
I completely agree with you.
Yeah. Yes. Me.
Yeah. Yes.
I second that, bitch.
No, for sure. Because like I'm on a low income family myself. And the thought of like you always go for what's the best option for me, and usually that's easy, cheap. I mean, it's not the like I would love to get all the organic local produce if I could, but a lot of the times I financially cannot. I need to just go for like I'm going for like the Asda Smart price or like that kind of thing. So it's a lot to put on one person and one individual. But on the flip side of that, it's a lot easier for me to change my habits than for me to try change the habits of a corporation.
Right.
Like I'm far more likely to reach the goal of me trying to change myself than me being like, here, you fucking wise up, wind your neck in,
But I agree.
Completely,
I totally agree with that. I just also feel like though we do have more power than we think because we're the consumer. We're the ones buying the product. So if we say, hey, you better, cut it out or I'm going to go someplace else. I do think we have more power. I think people don't, not people, but let's say bodies of power. They don't want us to know how much power we have. I actually think we have more power because there's more of us than there is of them. And so we are the ones buying their product. We can, there is some power, but I do agree with you for the most part. It's like, it feels very daunting. It feels very daunting.
Yeah, we're really disillusioned with our place in society, and a lot of what you're saying is a lot along the lines of like Marxist communism, not Stalin communism. That's completely a different thing. But yeah, the whole we're led to believe that the issues are within us and not with the top people. So if we're continuing to be in that state of mind, then yes, you're absolutely right. Like, when are we going to figure out that realistically, if we all came together, the power lies with us? We're the reason that these big corporations keep moving because we are the ones that's picking up the economic side of things. We're the ones that's purchasing products. We're the ones that's selling. Without us, corporations would not function realistically. Even the people that are working there, they need people like us working there for them to be able to run properly. But again, with your rationalization, with the whole disillusionment and everything being focused on the proletariat, as in Marxism would focus on, or the working class or the worker bees of society, it's gonna take a lot more for us to be able to shift our views and our mindsets to, well, they need us more than we need them, kind of, because we are led to believe, and it is ingrained in us, that we need them more than they need us.
Zoe, are you studying psychology, perchance?
That was actually sociology. Thank you.
Okay.
I do just want to emphasize, I in fact think that I'm talking about the relationship of capitalism because we are in a system, whether we want to be in it or not. It just is what it is factually, and this is the relationship. And once we're aware of the relationship, the transactional relationship, we start to have a little bit more power because everybody plays a role. You just have to figure out, where do I stand in the relationship to capitalism? Like, who am I in this, and what can I do? Whether you're, in fact, even if you are like middle class, upper class, you still have a role and you can still do something. It might look a little bit different than someone else, but we all can do something. And I think that's the main point.
Absolutely, because that again is the Marx's mentality for that. He's like, we're led to believe that these are the enemy, but the real enemy is capitalism. Like, that's the issue. The issue is where capitalism is and how it sucks us in. So you're completely right. I just, sorry, it's because I study it and I was just like, hey, that sounds like Marxism.
I love it. On this exact thought of the change that people can make that are not the individual per se, the Paris Climate Agreement of the UN is suggesting, and I'm using that word lightly, that countries by 2050 will have net zero in terms of carbon emissions. Net zero being that there is still output, but it's offset. And we haven't sort of really talked much about kind of how you offset that carbon footprint. But the reason I say I suggest, because even though it's an agreement and everyone has said yes, by 2050 that will happen, this was pre-pandemic, and I think people's habits have changed over the last few years. And I think that there is a culture that is difficult to shake in terms of this kind of capitalist society that both of you have just talked about. I specifically think, and I've just got an article up about it here, I think this was last week, there is a mayor from Bristol called Martin Reeve who went to speak on climate change in Vancouver. Look at us, linking up all of us. And this, oh my, I so planned this. But he flew from Bristol to Vancouver, which is a flight of 4,600 miles, to give a 14-minute speech, and then came back. How on earth do we ever expect that we're going to hit net zero when you're going to talk about these topics and you could just do them on fucking Zoom? Here we are. And I understand that, you know, us powering these machines that are doing this and streaming it, yes, of course, that all has an imprint. But I feel like there is a system that is flawed, even when it's trying to be fixed.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was my TED Talk.
Yay!
It was wonderful. Thank you.
Take a bow.
Oh, everyone. I'd like to thank my mother for bringing me up. No.
Yes, let's.
So I mentioned offsetting. How do you offset your carbon footprint? And
I have no idea what offsetting is. I'm not gonna lie. Like, see, when that quiz was coming up, I was like, offset? Is that not one of the guys from like Three Amigos? I don't know.
Put simply, it's what you do that counteracts your carbon footprint. So for instance, last week we had a whole conversation about being vegan, because a lot of those foods use less water to be produced. For instance, that's one of the ways with food. Wasting less food is another way you can offset. You mentioned
like being conscious about your recycling, like actually recycling properly, and like switching to add a vegetarian meal to your diet every week. And I do some of that. I do some of that.
So I mean that's all food based. Obviously there's clothing things. Zoe, I mean, you say that you didn't know what this is, but you've already talked about it with fast fashion, actually shopping secondhand, going to charity shops for your clothing. Before we went live, Val and I had a reminisce about a very specific charity shop visit that we had a few years ago. But there are so many ways in which we can offset it. How do you, this is just a question to both of you, how do you offset your emissions, or your footprint?
I'll let Val go first. Go on, Val. Take the floor. Take the floor, girl.
I think I'm not... I think I don't go about I'm gonna offset, but I do think, I don't know, in a different way. And I guess over time I've tried to create habits. I guess that's the way in which I think about it, habits. And some of them have been like, I'm not gonna lie, like I don't know, like I think you talked about recycling, Zoe. So that is just something, it's not that I wouldn't recycle, but that's just something that my municipality enforces. So that's a really cool way of like, let's say I wasn't somebody that even thought about that. Well, that's like everything in my community, we all recycle. So that's something that I do. I also don't drive here. I only use the SkyTrain, which is like our tube, but in the sky. Yeah, you should come and take it. Vancouver, everyone.
Is it like the DLR?
Yeah, it's more smooth and it smells less. But yeah. But yes. And as well as I am a vegetarian, but again, I'm not going to stand here and be like, well, I thought of all these things to offset my footprint. Now, I would say at the young age of 30, I might think that way. But at the time, these kinds of changes happened over time. And I think, like, I know this isn't about meat, but can I just say,
go for it.
Eat meat, like this is what I feel like passionate about is like, we kind of talk about things often in black or white. I know I'm a vegetarian, but I know for other people that eat meat, I'm like, why don't we talk to them about more sustainable kinds of meat sources? Because some people are like, hey, this is really important to me. I'm not going to change my mind. And it's like, great. Did you know that mussels are sustainable and beef definitely is not like a sustainable kind of meat source? So I just feel like maybe also hopeful and excited that the more educated we could offset things in a way that's easy for us, because I think it always goes back to like what is easy, what is practical for a lot of people. So like I guess the changes that I just described, like what offsets my carbon emissions, they're all easy for me to do because we're all tired. We're all like, I know we call ourselves lazy, but we all have to work. So of course we want to be lazy because we're running on fumes, people. This is 2022. Everyone's working so hard.
One simply can't run on fumes because that is an emission that we don't need.
I knew you were going to say that.
Exactly. Like I can be cute and be like, oh my gosh, like I also eat from home, but it's also because I'm kind of I don't have enough money to eat out all the time. So like that's also why I eat at home, right? So I guess I gave you some examples right there. But can I just add, I know I'm kind of going on. I want to bring it back to the like, okay, I work in theater. What can I do as a theater artist to also be offset my carbon footprint? Because I notice we waste a shit ton of stuff, like whether that be props or whatnot, plastic, and it's like, can I not be so wasteful in theater? So like that's what I'm giving myself new challenges and taking the plane less.
I wholeheartedly agree with your last thought there. Well, second last thought, because I guess the plane was the last thought. But I with my parents run a hire clothes company for theatre, and I guess we also have like a substantial amount of props and things. My thinking has always been with that is that people have these props. You don't need to go and get new ones. They're there. And these costumes are there. And you can repurpose a costume. It's there. Like it exists. And it frustrates me slightly when I see shows and I can see a costume has been like newly made for it, for a show that will do a 3-week run and never ever happen again. And that costume has probably been binned. Like
Exactly.
it's really annoying because I think if things are made well, then they can last a lifetime. So yeah, I think our industry can always do better. And I think that is really down to us to make sure that we do better within our industry. So you mentioned a lot about kind of how you offset anyway, actually, because you said, I think it was one of the first things you said at the start about light switches and switching things off and things.
Yeah.
Back.
So I don't do much in the theatre. I don't own my own theatre company, so I don't need to think about it like theatre wise. But yeah, a lot of it I don't do it because I'm conscious of the environment, and I don't do it because I'm conscious of my carbon footprint or climate change. That's not why I do it. Like a lot of it is for selfish reasons, to be honest. My switching off of certain switches and that aren't needed to be used is because I don't want to spend more money. My going to charity shops is because I love a charity shop find. Like I love a charity shop find. It's not because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna not buy fast fashion and I'm gonna like upcycle something, or I'm going to repurchase a dress that's already been purchased. It's just because I'm like, oh my god, this is so cute, I'm gonna buy it. Or if I'm getting rid of, like, if I'm taking stuff out my wardrobe, what I do is I see if any of my friends or family wants it first, and I don't throw it out. I give it to the charity shops unless it needs to be thrown out, because sometimes they do need to be thrown out. But it's never because I'm conscious of the fact I should be doing better for the environment. It's literally just because I'm like, well, this is probably easier to do, you know? It's not anything to do with I'm trying to reduce my carbon footprint or I'm trying to offset my carbon footprint. It just so happens that I do these things and it also offsets my carbon footprint. I still purchase from fast fashion places. I still buy from Primark. I still buy from Boohoo. I'm not going to lie. I still do things that I could be doing better with. I mean, I get my HelloFresh box which causes emissions because someone's driving that box up to me, etc. But it has meant that I'm eating less meat products because I've been incorporating at least 2 of my meals to be entirely vegetarian meals. So I'm not getting the same beef, etc. If I can, I try to buy butcher meat rather than supermarket meat because I feel like it's more locally sourced and usually better quality. Again, not to reduce my carbon footprint, but because it normally tastes better.
The reality of all this is, Zoe, which is so sort of the irony of it in a way, is you're not doing any of it to reduce your carbon footprint or to be kind of make more sustainable choices, but you are.
Yeah.
Like you just naturally, it's something you're doing.
I'm an accidental offsetter.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I've felt myself kind of, in a sense, kind of making a similar choice. A big thing for me was printing, because every show I ever work on, I'm like, I'm going to print the script out because I like having a physical copy and I write shit all over it. There's just something about having physical, like, manuscripts of a script, isn't there, right?
Yeah.
We all know, we've all done it. And I realized, because I'm lucky enough to be employed, that I end up printing lots of show scripts. And actually, it gets to a stupid stage because you can't reuse that paper, really, because it's written on all sides. And I found it really, really hard to make that shift. But I then realized how expensive printing was becoming, because printing is really expensive now. And I just started doing it. I got a different device. I have an iPad now, and I put scripts on here, and I use my laptop to still do laptop things. And I don't know what it is. It's something that was so hard at first, but now is like a really good choice because I can also write on the script, and I'm not printing hundreds of pages. So I don't know. It's small changes like that that definitely were both financially linked, like you're saying, Zoe, but
there's other reasons for it. I mean, I car share. I don't have my own car. I car share with my parents, but that's due to financial things. Like, that's not because I'm like, car sharing. I mean, we all technically have our own car because my dad uses his work van and I use my dad's car and my mom uses her car. But so, I mean, it's not that great. But it never, anything that I'm doing or anything that I think quite a few people are doing are never consciously, unless they're like super into, the going green, and which is wonderful. I love that when people are like so passionate about things like that. But a lot of the times people just do it accidentally. Like, they don't even mean to be doing it, and then they're like, oh wait, actually that choice that I've made here is impacting in a positive way.
Yeah, like all the furniture in my home is secondhand. I have not bought a single new piece of furniture, and I would be like kind of pretentious to be like, oh, I did that to offset my carbon footprint. No, I did it because I had no money. Okay?
I did it because I'm a broke ass. I'm broke, okay? I mean, this lovely sofa here that I'm currently sat on was from one of my grandmother's friends. I got a suite because I wasn't going to say no to a free suite. I've got a little armchair as well. But everything in my bedroom I did purchase from either IKEA or Amazon because I wanted new bedroom furniture. But the bedroom furniture that I did have is now in Riley's room. So I didn't get rid of it.
Yeah. And I mean, with the rise,
I'm just so green.
It's the top. With the increased rise of online shopping, and I think that was always inevitable in a way, because it's, as you've mentioned, it's the convenience. I don't have to go to a shop. I fear that things like charity shops, I
don't have to be around people.
It's true. I fear that charity shops are gonna struggle a little bit, potentially. I don't have any hardcore facts for you on that, but there are still things like eBay that are secondhand. There's on Amazon. I know how terrible is to even mention that name in this conversation, but below the buy button, there's secondhand options on almost every product, and they're there. And they're usually cheaper as well. So yeah, I mean, it's there. Cool. I'm keen to wrap it up, because although it's World Environment Day, it's also World Donut Day. So we gotta go and get those calories. But before we do that, I'd love to go to everyone again and kind of the reason that we do dangerous dialogues is to encourage other people to have their dialogues. And you know, often a lot of us don't know a lot about the topic that we're talking about, and that's really great, because everyone should be able to kind of talk about these things and be able to learn and be able to kind of have that free speech about how they feel and things, but also be willing to learn about those things from people that do know a little bit more. So I always feel like I take something away from these conversations. What do people feel like they've taken away from this one today? Zoe.
Sure. I feel like I've learned a lot more about myself and the changes I've made, even if they're accidental, on how to offset my carbon footprint. And even seeing, I had no idea how a carbon footprint was worked out until I used the calculator that you showed earlier. So I feel like I am going to make more of a conscious effort to even check my products, like my sweets and that, for things like palm oil and stuff like that. It's something I do want to get into more. And also the fact that I'm going to be extremely disappointed after this because we're not actually having donuts, and you've now made me really want one.
It was all a theatrical lie. Oh, I'm actually having tuna.
Yeah, that's tuna.
I am having tuna, actually. I'm making tuna pasta bake. Woo! Exciting.
Nice.
And no food waste in that, because it will do me like 3 meals for this week. Anyway, Val, what have you taken away from this conversation?
You know, first of all, I love hearing how other people are responding to this. I think that's what I'm interested in, because this is not possibly, I think this is the most high stress, biggest crisis that we will have to face, that our possible offspring, potential children, well, some of us have children here, but I don't. But regardless, it's like we need to also, I think this is a complicated issue. I think we've kind of hit the nail on the head of like, we need to respond to it in the most kind of simple, clear way that we can. Otherwise, we get overwhelmed with our emotions. And let's face it, it's a really scary, daunting topic. And I think that's why we don't like to think about it. That's why we don't like to talk about it. And I think the first thing is to be like, acknowledge that, be easy with yourself and go, hey, this makes me uncomfortable to think about. How can I keep it simple so I'm still making smart choices, responsible choices for the planet, for other people, right? But also not stress myself out, because we're already stressed out enough. Let's just keep it simple. Keep it simple.
I agree more with both of you than anything I could say. I think I would have to take the thought of conciseness away from this, and I will put it how the British trains say it. If you say it like we've just done, I will see it, and therefore I can sort it. So I think that's my see it, say it, sorted for the day, is that because we've said it, I might be more consciously thinking about it.
Can I also give, before you wrap up, I'm so sorry, I just thought I have to give a shout out to Extinction Rebellion, to organizations out there that are creating societal disruptions. There's something to be said about that. I'm not affiliated with that organization, but I do think that I don't know, they're playing a role in our societies where they're bringing it to our attention in a totally different way, and a lot of climate change activists, yes, that are risking their lives, their reputation. They're taking on huge risks for our future, and some of us can't for various reasons, and that's okay too. But I also just want to say thank you to all the climate change activists out there in the world.
Hear, hear. Absolutely. Lovely. Thank you so much. to the wonderful Zoe and the wonderful Valerie for joining us today. Wherever you are in the world watching this, and whenever you are, because the world is so exciting now that you can watch it right now or in the future. Who knows? There might be people watching this as like a documentary in the future, and they'll be like, "Wow, I can't believe they thought all that was like so progressive." That's just how I live my life.
Fucking morons.
If you've enjoyed this, please do have your own conversation about climate change and about how you can make an impact in the world with your carbon footprint. Next week is the start of our Pride Month programming. We are joined by the amazing Edward Dickens to talk about conversion therapy. We're going for the light topics this Pride Month. We've got that. We're talking about marriage equality. Again, Edward will be an interesting one to talk to about that. He is a minister. And finally, we're talking about why it is important that there's Pride Month. It's still illegal to be a queer person in so many countries in the world, still punishable by death. So just ending on that really happy note. Have a lovely rest of the World Environment Day, everyone.
I'll miss you on my break, guys. Unless I'm called in for last minute things.
Oh yeah, you